Hey guys, Sean from VS Marine here, and today we're going to go through the Axis Wake Research dash system and show you a little bit how everything works. Great thing about Axis is how simple everything is. Everything's pretty cut and dry, on, off, left, right. So should be a nice little tutorial, and let's get started. Okay, so first things first is our battery switch. It's located here under the observer seat, which is a nice location. You don't have to move people out of the way to get to it. We're going to turn our battery switch all the way down to 1+2. What that does is that makes sure we're starting off both batteries and the system's always charging both batteries, keeping our batteries nice and fresh. So once our batteries are turned on, the next thing is we're going to go to our key switch. As we turn the key on, you'll notice the blower comes on automatically, and when the blower's on, it'll run for 4 minutes and it'll shut itself off. Nice and easy. You don't even have to think about it. It just does its job. What we'll do first is we'll go through the left-hand smash pad. This is going to be basically going to have your blower, as we talked about, your bilge pumps, which are also automatic. You have 2 bilge pumps in this boat, one here under the floor and one behind the motor. Again, both are automated. You don't have to worry about them, but the switch is here if you want to get ahead of the game, if you take a wave over the bow or something like that. Our next switch here is going to be our interior lights. So there's going to be little LEDs located throughout the boat in all the right places, everywhere you need them. Next is going to be our nav and anchor lights. The first click on your nav light is going to be your anchor light, which is on top of the tower. Second click is going to be your nav lights on each side of the boat. And third click is going to be all on. Lastly, off. Down at the bottom, you're going to have all your ballast system here. So you have your standard system, which is going to be your center tank and your port and starboard tanks. That's going to be a standard equipped Axis. If your boat has the plug-and-play plumbing, you have the opportunity to have 2 more bags in the rear and a bag plumbed into the front. That's going to be your bow switch here. So our first click is going to be fill. Our second click is going to be drain, and our third click is going to be off. Now the nice thing about Malibu and Axis pumps is we run an aerator pump, so they are very robust. They're not going to burn up if you run them dry, so it's no worries turning these on and off. And our pumps seem to last quite a long time and are easy to change out. So next thing is going to be our other smash pad here. So this is going to be more of what's optional on our Axis. We equip our boats with the power wedge. So you have power wedge up, power wedge down, and our go home function. All the other buttons on this boat in particular are not going to work. We do not have a heater installed in this boat, docking lights, underwater lights, under seat lighting, or tower lights. Now all those switches are there in case you want to add options later. Everything's pre-wired. Just have your local dealer go ahead and add those options and wire it right up to the switch. Super easy. So in this tutorial though, we're just going to talk about the wedge on this smash pad. So basically, wedge down. If you hold this button, the wedge will deploy, and you'll see here on the info screen that currently the wedge is stowed. The wedge is positionable in 7 different positions. You're going to have a lift, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. A lot of people who aren't familiar with the wedge, sometimes it's counterintuitive to what you think, but basically when the wedge is all the way down in the down position, the foil is flat. That's going to be wedge number 1. That is the least amount of downforce on your boat. So as we go to wedge 2, wedge 3, wedge 4, wedge 5, wedge 6, the further that wedge swings away from the boat, the harder the wedge is pulling the rear end of the boat down into the water, simulating up to 1,500 pounds of ballast. Now, the more you pull the rear end down into the water, the taller, steeper your wake and wave is going to get. If you're surfing, you're going to get that nice, tall, steep wave. Great for beginners to hold them in the pocket. And if you're a little more advanced and you like the longer wave, you can stretch that thing out by running less wedge, give you lots of room to drop back, pump your way back in, gain some momentum, bust an air. do 360s, things like that. Wedge up, wedge down. That's going to be how you position your wedge in those different positions. The one position we didn't talk about is going to be the lift mode. Lift mode is a time and fuel saving device. Basically, the wedge acts like a hydrofoil. Now we're going to go negative degrees. We're kicking that wedge back towards the boat, creating lift. Basically, negative 500 pounds of ballast pushing the bottom of the boat up. What that does is when you're wakeboarding, you have the boat loaded down, and you have your cruise control on to wakeboard speeds. As you throttle up, that wedge is automatically going to go to lift mode, help you get on plane faster, save you some gas, and once you get in 75% of your target speed, that wedge will drop back to drag mode, pull the back end of the boat down in the water, making that super awesome wake that you love. Lastly, when it comes to the power wedge, some things to keep in mind is the wedge can only be stowed if the boat's moving. That's a call we get a lot. I'm on the water, my wedge will not go up. Make sure your boat's in gear. Make sure your speed is registering at least a mile an hour or below 10 miles an hour, and then go ahead and hit that wedge up button to stow the wedge. That again, another safety device programmed into the boat. Basically, we don't want people swimming around in the back of the boat with their legs down there and the wedge come up and get them. So another great safety device programmed into the boats by Malibu and Axis. Lastly, what we're going to talk about here is this go home button. This button is basically a lifesaver. This is your basically that's your fail safe. You're all done riding, you're all done surfing, you're ready to go back to the dock. Put the boat in gear, let the speed register a mile an hour, hit that go home button for a couple seconds, and what that's going to do, it's going to start draining all your ballast, it's going to turn your cruise control off, it's going to center your surf gates, and because you're moving, it's going to go ahead and stow that wedge for you too. So that is the easiest way to get the boat ready to go back to the dock. Okay guys, so next up is going to be our cruise control and our surf gate controls, and then our info centers. So basically on this device here, you're going to see your cruise on and off, and then this is how you adjust your speed up and down. Now what I like to talk about cruise control on our boats, basically everyone's familiar with cruise control in our cars. I like to explain our cruise control in our boats to be opposite of our cars. So in our cars, we get up to speed, then we set our cruise. On our boats, we set our cruise, and then we get up to speed. So first thing we're going to do here is we're going to turn our cruise on, and that shows you on the info screen that our cruise has been turned on. The PW stands for paddle wheel. That's where we're getting our source of speed. Now as you can see, our cruise is set for 9.5 miles an hour, and we can adjust that by pressing the up and down arrows. So if we go up and down, one click at a time is going to go by 0.1 mile an hour, and if we hold that down, it'll actually jump by a mile an hour at a time. So when our rider's back there saying faster, faster, or slower, slower, we just have to give the button a couple clicks. The boat will do the work for us. We're not having to use the throttle control anymore once the cruise control is engaged. Once your rider falls, go ahead and go back to neutral, let the boat settle down, idle back to your rider, pick them up. To turn the cruise control off, again, go ahead, go back to neutral, click your cruise off, and now you have full control over your throttle again. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about here is our surf gate controls. We have surf left, surf right, and center. Center is basically our off button. Now the way I like to explain our surf gate system is you always are picking the button for which foot forward you are. If you're left foot forward, you're going to click surf left. If you're right foot forward, you're going to click surf right. The only time that you wouldn't do that, I guess, is if you're going to ride backside, then it would be the opposite. But most often people like to ride front side, and you're going to click the button of which foot forward you are. So we're going to go ahead here, click surf left, and what you're going to notice on the info screen is now our left button has turned dark. Notice that nothing has happened, no surf gates moved, no motors are running back there. The reason for that is surf gates, just like the power wedge, are speed actuated. So the way it works is as we throttle up and as our speeds reach above 7 miles an hour, what's going to happen is this little button here is going to start turning blinking black and white, and once it's back to black, you know it's fully engaged. As you throttle down and you go below 7 miles an hour, the surf gates will automatically retract, allowing you to steer straight and the boat handle well at low speeds. Surf gates also have a high speed alarm, just like the Power Wedge. The high speed alarm for surf gate is between about 13 miles an hour. If you forget the surf gate's armed, the surf gate will automatically close and keep you safe. If that happens, just go and slow down, press your C button, and get that surf gate unarmed. I did mention the Power Wedge as well. The threshold for the Power Wedge is at 26 miles an hour for high speed, so you get above 26 miles an hour, you will get that high speed wedge alarm. Again, just drop back down below 10 miles an hour, go ahead and stow your wedge. The last button here is going to be these big arrows here. All these simply do is go through our menu screen here on the info center. So you're going, here's our normal cruise control screen, which is showing us our actual miles an hour, what our cruise is set to, our surf gate position, and our wedge position. The next screen is going to be our depth and our air lake temperature. And lastly, this is what's going to show our engine hours and how to get into our settings menu. The curved arrow here at the bottom of this big button is going to be your enter button, and that's how you get into that settings menu. Of course, saving everyone's favorite for last is going to be our stereo system. As you can see, we are Bluetooth equipped, and stereo system is very easy. Just go ahead and go into your Bluetooth system, and it should come up here as MBB. Just give it a click. And now we're connected, and we can go pick a song. You want to make sure your phone volume's turned all the way up, and then you can control your volume here. You do have zone control, so if you hit the tune button, zone 1 is going to be the boat, so I can turn the boat down so I don't blast my passengers out of the water. And we can turn our zone 2, which is our tower, up, so our riders can hear the music, but our passengers are still comfortable. When our rider falls, we want to talk to them. We do have a mute button, so we can mute the music, talk to our rider, and get everything back going. So that's basically our dash tutorial on Axis. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us here at VS Marine, 805-466-9058, or always feel free to email us. My personal email is Sean, SHAWN, @vsmarine.com, and happy boating, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the water.